A lot has changed. There was no HEB out here. There was nothing but a Dairy Queen. So that was a big reason big reason why we couldn't leave campus when I was at Hayes High School.
Because everybody would go to the Dairy Queen.
It was just there's nowhere else to go, and if everybody left, that's where they would go, and they probably wouldn't come back. So.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Terry Lee with the Front Porch podcast. First time I've ever done this with James Grayson with Go Texas Productions. So, want to thank him a lot for the kind of the foresight he's put forth in gathering local interviewers, having normal conversations with normal folks. So, big thanks to James and his folks over there. Also, want to thank Brian McKinney for having us out. This is it's a beautiful place. Out at his World War II miniature golf course right out here off 1626 in Buda. If you've never been, highly recommend it. Me and my son come out here quite a bit. Really enjoy it. If you're a history guy like myself, I enjoy it. A golf guy, I really enjoy that as well, and he's doing some really neat things out here. So if you haven't tried it, come out here to 1626, say hi to Brian, and I'm always up for a game too. So I also want to thank Anthony Hipolito today, our first ever guest that we've had on this podcast. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of time for him to talk about himself, but just to tee everybody up a little bit, Anthony has been in the south of Austin area since the 80s. He was born in Austin, got down here in the mid-80s, he opened up Dahlstrom Middle School, and he's got his family now, and they live out in Dripping Springs, his wife, his two daughters. One's flown the coop out at Texas Tech. And he was with APD for about 21 years? 23 years. Yep. Left in 21. We'll talk about all that here in a little bit. And now with the Hays County Sheriff's Office. But so one of the questions I always have, because I got out here in 2011, and my understanding from people is you've got like the pre-HEB in Kyle and the post-HEB in Kyle, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that. So how has this place really changed since the 80s, this Buda Kyle Dripping Springs area?
It's unrecognizable. From when we moved out here in the summer of 1985, just after I finished fifth grade over at Pleasant Hill Elementary School in South Austin. And 1626 was a 2-lane road, 1 lane each direction, and you had to go through Buda to get to 2770 to get to Hayes High School. So a lot has changed. There was no HEB out here. There was nothing but a Dairy Queen. So that was a big reason. Big reason why we couldn't leave campus when I was at Hayes High School.
Because everybody would go to the Dairy Queen.
It was just there's nowhere else to go, and if everybody left, that's where they would go, and they probably wouldn't come back. So
So I mean, obviously everything's changed in conjunction, right? I mean, the world has changed a lot since the 80s as well. But do you really feel like anything in particular with this area? Buda Kyle was probably a lot more rural in the time, and my concern now is we're kind of getting just kind of swallowed up by the city of Austin. But have we done anything, in your opinion, to really kind of maintain that small town feel, maybe that you're more familiar with growing up?
I think just the people make it that. As much as the Buda Kyle and the entire Hays County is growing, I think the heart and soul of the community is the people. Yeah, and they're maintaining that small town feel. And I hope it stays that way for a long time. That's what I have grown to know about Hays County and what I really love about it.
Sure. So is it safe to say that you guys are here for the long run?
Yeah, I don't foresee myself going anywhere, especially with the plans I have for the future.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about that. Yeah. And I don't want to date you, but I think I mentioned it earlier that you started Dahlstrom a couple months after I was born, so you've got a little bit of a head start. But you and your wife Peggy, I'm always trying to get some free parenting advice wherever I can, because I've got a 9, a 6, and a 5-year-old, and it's exciting. We're doing all the sports things, and I love watching them kind of navigate the elementary school. But I got to tell you, and I think you're going to talk a little bit more about this later, but kind of looking out into junior high and high school, I'm excited for a number of reasons, but I'm also pretty nervous. So anytime I have the opportunity to talk to some folks who are more experienced than myself, I'm always trying to get a little bit of free advice. What's really changed as far as, how you were parented and you grew up, and how, you really had to parent your girls, especially in junior high and high school these days? Yeah, so
I think the biggest difference from the time that we grew up, even when you grew up, you said you were born in '85. So even then, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't social media, and what these kids learn and what they see and what they digest on a daily basis. I think truly affects not only their how they are growing up, but just how they act on a daily basis. And that to me, that's been the hardest, being able to navigate when social media is given, when it's not, when to take it away. We always talk about how parenting is probably the hardest thing that we've ever done, next to being married, right? Marriage is tough as well, but being a dad, being a parent, it's fun, it's rewarding.
Sure.
It's very challenging. But I've grown over the years to be more patient, and that was very hard for me.
Yeah.
Because the way I was brought up, it was yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and that's how we rolled. And you have to be able to adapt with generations. And that's just part of parenting, and learn from your mistakes, and not be too proud to tell your kids you're sorry and you made a mistake. And,
right.
Just don't. That's my advice to you, is just if you're wrong, and sit your son or daughter down and say, hey, Dad made a mistake, and
Sure.
I thought I was doing the right thing at the time, but I'm sorry.
Yeah, not be too proud about it. I think as guys too, we had that tendency to want to kind of smother a problem and be on top of things and fix it a little bit. But having my wife, and then as my 9-year-old's grown up a little bit, I think some of the value that I've come is just to nod and we're just going to let this flame out a little bit and talk it through. I think that parental engagement is so important, maybe now more than ever, because something my wife and I realized early on was every day that our kids get older, there's just more external forces that are coming into their life. And, you and I can control as much of our kids' surroundings as we can, but then you've got school, you've got teachers, you've got friends' parents, and those things. So staying engaged and involved and making it a place that your kids want to be a part of, I think that's becoming something more and more evident to me. What kind of things did the girls do that you guys were really involved with?
So my girls played soccer growing up,
Okay.
and then they slowly transitioned into the FFA, the 4-H world. Both my kids showed pigs.
Okay.
As you mentioned earlier, my oldest has since graduated high school, so she's done. But my sophomore still shows pigs, so that's what we do. I work full-time job. I'm doing the campaign now, and then we have two young pigs at home that we take care of on a daily basis. Although the kids do most of the work, but you have to keep them busy. You have to give them something to do. Otherwise, they'll sit in their bed, or they'll watch TV, or they'll scroll on Facebook or TikTok or Snapchat. And there's evil in the world, and there's a lot of outside influences, like you mentioned, and that's we just try to keep them busy and give them, have goals for them, and some responsibility.
Going to talk about idle hands being the work of the devil, and I've seen that more and more as we've got some kids come over to help with our kids babysitting and things like that. Some of the things that they've mentioned is that the folks who aren't really involved with school, whose parents aren't really involved with them, there's just kind of like this social grate, if you will, that sometimes that's where kids get involved with bad stuff, right? And that's kind of the traps that they fall into sometimes. So your oldest, Texas Tech, what's she doing up there?
Yeah, so she's enrolled at Texas Tech, but she's still here in Hays County.
Okay.
She's doing everything online her first year, which is amazing. We get to have her for another year. But she's also working essentially full time. She's got like 3 or 4 different jobs, along with going to school, and her boyfriend lives here in Buda still, so she's not home much. She's busy, but we're proud of her. She's done really, really good, and she's looking forward to moving up to Lubbock here in the fall of next year. So we're just trying to take advantage of the time that we have.
Yeah, I was about to ask, are you ready for that?
Yeah, I am. She's ready to spread her wings. She's an old soul, and she's very mature for her age. So, just like we were when we were 18, we knew everything. And we wanted to fly the coop and go do our own thing. So that's what she wants. And we're embracing that, and we'll be there to support her. And just go from there.
That's awesome. I like West Texas has got a unique charm to it. The Lubbock Amarillo area, it smells a little different, but it's definitely got a cool little charm to it. So congrats on getting one through school, and that's good. I'm glad that was a good experience for you guys. So talking about what you've done professionally, so you graduated from Hays High School, you opened up Hays High School. and then you graduated in 93. Did you go straight into APD or Austin Police Department from there? Or kind of what was your journey in getting into law enforcement?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I grew up around law enforcement. My dad was a police officer in Austin for just under 30 years. He graduated the police academy, I believe, in 1979. Okay. So, and I was born in 75. So from 4 years old and on, that's all I knew was law enforcement. And I looked up to cops, and I was running around the police station. So I always had an idea in the back of my mind that's something I wanted to do. I graduated from Hayes High School in 1993. But I needed to go to college to get the necessary hours to be able to apply at the Austin Police Department. At that time, you had to have a certain amount of hours before you could even apply. So I started just going to the community college here in Austin and worked.
Yep.
And then when I had enough hours and it was time and I was at the right age to apply, I did.
Yeah. So where did you start? I mean, kind of what was your progression as soon as you became an officer?
Yeah. So when you start, you always have to start on patrol at any agency that you go to. So, and that's why you sign up, right? You want to play cops and robbers. You want to answer those 911 calls. You want to be seen in the patrol car, patrolling around, catching the bad guys. So that's what you do. That's what you signed up for. And that's something, although I've been in law enforcement 25 years, that's something that I'll never forget.
Right.
You don't want to forget why you signed up or why you wanted to be in law enforcement. So that's what I did at APD. I started out on patrol. I did about 2.5 years before I transferred to walking beat on 6th Street. I did walking beat and bike patrol. So I was able to ride a bike every single day, 40 hours a week, riding around 6th Street. 6th Street, the warehouse district, and then at that time, the Guadalupe Street.
Yep.
We worked up and down there. So I got paid to ride a bike, right? So I did that for quite some time. And through my 23 years there at APD, I was blessed to be able to move around and do a lot of different jobs. I never got bored.
Sure.
I never wanted to get burned out. So I did a lot of what they called street response. It was a lot of hot spot.
Yeah.
You go out and tackle whatever the hot spot is.
Right.
A lot of street level narcotic buys, a lot of street level prostitution deals. So I did that quite some time. That's about the same time I met my wife in 2004. From there, I went and rode horses for like 2.5 years. I did mounted patrol. Went back to patrol. Then I promoted as a corporal. Every time you promote in the law enforcement military, you have to go back to you're the new guy. So went back to evening patrol. Did that for a little bit. Then I went and did the public information office. I handled a lot of the open records requests that came in through the media. I did that. I did most of the interviews that we needed to do at the Austin Police Department with the media. I did, and then I promoted again. Went back to sergeant. You have to go back, and I did the evening shift thing. So I spent a lot of time not eating dinner with the family during those times, right? So did patrol as a sergeant. Went over to internal affair. I did that for like 2.5 years. Did internal affairs, and when I retired, I was a sergeant over the organized crime division, criminal interdiction. And I did that from about 2017 to 2021 when I retired in July of 2021. I did a variety. I did a lot of executive protection. That was an auxiliary detail. I was part of that team. So at any time a president or vice president would come into town, I would be assigned a specific site that person was visiting.
Sure.
And that was me. I was responsible for the entire thing, whether it be inside, outside, streets blocked, who was blocking the streets, stuff like that. So yeah, it's just a ton of fun, and I was able to do a ton at APD to keep me interested, and yeah, it was fun.
I had no idea there were that many things.
Oh, and there's many more. I mean, you can do K9, you can work the gang unit, you can work human trafficking, you can work just homicide, robbery.
Sure.
It's just a ton, and that's one of the benefits about a larger department in a bigger city. There's just many more specialized units that you can do when you're staffed. There's in Austin these days, they just don't have that, so mostly everybody's back on patrol. Answering the 911 calls. So we have a little bit of that at the sheriff's office, not as much, but yeah, it's a good opportunity for folks who want to get off the street, who are a little bit burned out, want to go do something else. It's just it's an opportunity.
Kind of different places to go. So what were some of your favorite spots to be in while you were there?
I had a good time at many. I had fun at all of them. But when you get paid to ride a bike, you get paid to ride a horse every day. Those are two of the assignments I really enjoyed. Working in the public information office was fun because I got to interact with the media. I got to develop those relationships. But I also got to work with the command staff at APD, whether it be the chief or the assistant chiefs or the commanders. I was able to see how the department was run from the inside out.
Right.
And although when I worked internal affairs, that was probably one of the most stressful jobs that I had to do, because you're investigating cops, you're investigating your friends per se. But
yeah,
again, in that spot, you're able to, again, see the department, why decisions are made, who's making the decisions, and just kind of watch and learn and be able to interact with the folks that make those decisions. And I think those are the two assignments that I was able to grow a lot from, just because I saw different leadership styles. I saw what worked, what didn't, and I saw what I wanted to eventually be or didn't want to be, right? So you take the good from good leaders, bad leaders, and you just try to develop yourself and to become the best leader you can be.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in retrospect, 25 years in the books now, anything you wish you would have done in your time over at APD that you didn't get the chance to?
I don't think so. I probably should have promoted one more time, but I was having a lot of fun in the organized crime division.
Sure.
I was in charge of our criminal interdiction team, so we battled the Mexican cartel every single day. And that was fun. Just the challenge of my guys. I was in charge of like 10 or 11 guys that worked interdiction up and down I-35 from Comal County to Williamson County. But we also worked the airport, looking for drug loads coming in and out, money loads coming in and out. If people knew what was coming up and down I-35 on a daily basis, it'd be very, very scared.
I would imagine so. Yeah.
It's not just drugs and not money, it's just guns and fuel theft, and it's just the criminal element.
Well, you talk about, one of the most eye-opening things for me and my wife, we moved. So I grew up in Houston, went to A&M, and then we came out here in 2011. And it wasn't long after we were here, we were on a Facebook group or what have you, and somebody was talking about somebody following them at Target, and the idea of people stealing children. We didn't have any kids at the time, so it was scary. And it's like, oh my God, this stuff is real. But we really started to learn about this I-35 corridor and legitimately what an artery into United States it was. And so that you tell me that there's so much going up on 35, up and down 35. I'm sure you guys have got an unbelievable amount of stories that would be just terrifyingly eye-opening for a lot of folks.
For sure. If you saw the news today, you saw that Kyle police they released a press release today talking about a human trafficking ring that they made like 5 arrests just the other day. They had to use our SWAT team to get those folks in custody, but San Marcos just had a similar one just a few days ago. And we're told that if there's 2, there's a dozen in Hays County. So, and that's what's scary, right? People don't really think or don't want to believe what's here in Hays County.
Yeah.
It's a small, quaint, it's a very, very safe county, but at the same time, when you have a corridor like I-35, we're 3 hours from Mexico, right?
Yeah.
So what's here, it's real, but we just need to be aware. You need to be cognizant about what's around your surroundings, and don't be afraid to say something.
Yeah. Yeah, we have this idea that, that doesn't happen, not where I live, but I don't think we can be vigilant enough these days. So you left APD in 21, right? Kind of right in the height of the epidemic. What was that process like? Because that was a huge part of your life. That was half your life at that point. What was behind that move,
Yeah, so that was, anytime you decide to retire from anything, it's a huge decision financially for your family. And at the time I was 45 years old, right? You can retire at 23 years.
Right.
I just felt it was the right time. You can only be kicked so many times as an employee, right? The city of Austin, you see the way it is now. The council really doesn't support its officers at all. That's why they're leaving by the dozens every single month. And I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to get to the point where I was disgruntled and mad and upset. I wanted to leave on my terms. I was proud of the work that I had done, but I also knew my time in law enforcement wasn't going to be over.
Right.
At the time, I had a couple different options. I was offered a job at the Lake Travis ISD. They were starting a brand new department, and I wanted that challenge to be a part of developing and growing that department, because I knew eventually I was going to run for sheriff a few years later. So I thought that experience of growing a department and learning it and learning the ins and outs would benefit that. But also, I have a brother that works at the sheriff's office here in Hays County. Always, even though I worked at APD, I always was a little bit jealous of him being able to work in Hays County, because that's where we grew up, right?
Yeah.
And I love the people of Hays County, and I wanted that opportunity. And I'd always been talking to Sheriff Cutler over the years about, hey, whenever you're done, I want to maybe consider running for your position. He'd always try to recruit me. I'd see him every day at the gym. He'd, hey, come work for us. And we had a conversation, and I decided to turn down the job at Lake Travis ISD and come over to Hays County Sheriff's Office. And it's been a great move, man. I've been there 2 years now. It's just great, and I love working in Hays County. I grew up out here. I ran the streets of Buda, Leisure Woods on a bike, running around, just having a good time, right? So I know a lot of people in Hays County, and that's what I'm passionate about. I love serving. I love volunteering. I love just being in the community. And what better way to go out and serve the citizens in the county you grew up in? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, total novice. I mean, kind of maybe a dumb question, but what's really the difference between your APD, your troopers, your sheriff's office? Like I know nothing.
Yep.
What's really the difference between going from Austin Police Department to the Hays County Sheriff?
Yeah, so that's a good question. A lot of people really don't know, and that's okay, right? It's so we're all peace officers. We're all certified peace officers in the state of Texas. We all have the same license. It's just a matter of what county you work in, what city you work in, or if you work. You mentioned Department of Public Safety, DPS. They're the statewide patrol, right? So the difference is for them, they tend to just work the highways, and they do help out the counties with some calls as needed, but they have the statewide jurisdiction.
Okay.
The city police, like we have here in Hays County, we have Buda Police, Kyle Police, San Marcos Police. They patrol the actual city limits of each city.
Okay.
Although we still have jurisdiction, that's their city. They take care of it. We go in and help if they need some help.
Okay.
We patrol and answer 911 calls. Everything else in the county.
Okay.
Whether it be Dripping Springs, Wimberley, Ulen, Niederwald, Maxwell, anything that's unincorporated, we respond and take care of. We all do the same thing. We all have the same authorities. We all have the same arrest powers. It's just where you work, who you work for. That's the only difference.
So you guys are maybe kind of filling in some of the gaps and making sure that no area is left, untended to.
Correct.
Basically.
That's right.
How's the relationship really changed? There was some stuff that happened in 2014. How has the relationship changed between law enforcement and people? And I ask that question because if I were to turn on the news right now or, go to the wrong stations, which if you're watching the news, I think most of them are the wrong stations, but they would just have you believe it's a very antagonistic relationship. But you don't have to peel back the onion, at least in my experience, to find some really amazing relationships with law enforcement and communities that run the gambit. So, I mean, I could form my ill-advised opinion. I could let CNN and Fox News give me their ill-advised opinions, but probably more interested in yours, somebody who's been doing it for 25 years. Like, how has that relationship with the communities changed?
I don't know if it's changed much. I mean, for the most part, the majority of the people in every city and county, I firmly believe, love and appreciate what law enforcement does.
Sure.
And the service that we provide. They want law enforcement to show up every time they call 911, and for the most part, we're appreciated.
Yeah.
Here in Hays County, I think just everybody waves at me every time I'm driving around. No matter where I'm at in the county, everybody's waving at me.
Yeah.
And it's just a great feeling. It's always been that way ever since I moved here in 1985. I think for just like the city of Austin, I think the majority of the city loves and appreciates their cops. It's a very, very loud 10 to 30 people that make the most noise, that are always at the council meetings, that always portray bad. And that's what I think that's what it is everywhere. It's a very, very loud majority. And for whatever reason, the City Council of Austin and the folks that make decisions there tend to listen to those folks. And it's at the city's demise.
Yeah, they really, because I mean, you mentioned it earlier how many police officers are leaving the city of Austin. It's just alarming. I've got a neighbor who's just right across the street, and he was there for about 20 years, and he's probably the most zen type of guy that I can imagine. And if anybody belongs kind of in that 6th Street spot to diffuse a situation and be there, he was just a great public servant. And unfortunately, he just kind of stepped out while he could, because at 23 years, it was kind of a natural time for you to leave. And he was more or less in the same situation. So you're doing public relations essentially for the Hays County Sheriff's Office now.
Yeah,
right?
that's one of my jobs. Well, I'm assigned to the Community Outreach Division.
Okay.
And part of that job is we're public information officers. So we do a lot of, like today I did 2-3 interviews in reference to human trafficking. So anytime that we do interviews at the Sheriff's Office, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be me that's doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they choose me just because of the experience I brought from APD.
Sure.
And they know that I'll always I'll shed good light on what our troops are doing, what our officers are doing, and yeah.
Did you ever get into? I mean, you didn't get into this to be community facing and speak on behalf of the police department?
No, I didn't. No, we all sign up to be cops, right? We all sign up to chase the bad guys, go to the bank robberies, go to the stabbings, all the fun stuff, right?
Fun stuff.
But a lot of people don't. Yeah,
I love a good stabbing as much as the next guy.
So yeah, it's just no. At the time when I first signed up, I had no idea that there was going to be a public information position that I could one day go to.
Right.
But a lot of people don't realize that there's just a variety of things that officers and deputies can do within that department, and that's one of them. And I did it at APD for like 3 years full time, and then part time for my entire career. For the majority of my career, I would go, and anytime there was an officer involved shooting or a SWAT call or robbery, I'd go out and talk to the media and tell them what was going on, because I think transparency is a big deal.
Absolutely.
I think everybody needs to know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, that's fan. I mean, I feel like sometimes I meet folks for a living, and it's nice, being really involved in the community. And people, you're, extremely more popular than I am, which really isn't that difficult to do. But I know whenever I see you out at coffee and things like that, you are just constantly, people have got questions for you. They want to interact with you. And I think that there is a level of realness and transparency that you bring to law enforcement that people appreciate and that they don't really expect. So to humanize that type of situation, not just be in a car, not be, this guy over here in the corner, but that you're actually here, I think people really appreciate it. And, a reason why I was looking forward to this conversation today.
Yeah. It's important. Humanizing the badge is
I think that's a really good way to say it.
Very, very, very important to me. Although when I was on patrol, we had to answer all those 911 calls because there's always a lot of them. Right? But in that downtime, it was important for me to just get out of my car and walk around either a neighborhood or a playground or, businesses. Hey, how are you doing? My name is Anthony Hipolito. I'm working in the area. If you need something, give me a call. If you have any questions, don't hesitate.
Sure.
We're servants. We signed up to be to not just put people in jail. A lot of people just think that's what police officers do and want to do, and we wear so many hats as law enforcement. And being a community, doing community policing and interacting with the community is important because you want to develop those relationships and start meeting people as kids, right? You want to be that positive role model for that 4-year-old who's looking up to you, right?
Right.
And it's just that's what it's all about.
So can you think of any of those kind of feel-good stories where you met somebody and, their life could have gone, not saying that, you were the sole reason why their life changed, but maybe you gave them a relationship and you humanized the badge, so to say. Can you think of one of those times where maybe you met somebody, you didn't think twice about it, but then maybe they came back to you at some point in the future and were like, hey, man, you came by the neighborhood and you may not remember me, but...
I don't know if I can remember a specific instance, but at times throughout my career, people would come up to me and say, "Hey, you arrested me," or "You arrested my dad," or something like that. And to me, no matter if I was arresting you or just saying hi to you, I was going to treat you the same way.
Yeah.
Just because I'm putting you in handcuffs, just because I'm taking you to jail, doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Right.
You made a mistake. Every time I took somebody to jail, they were in my back seat crying, and I understood, right? Their life is changing, their rights are being taken away, but I would always try to reassure him or her, hey, you just made a mistake. You're not a bad person. It's not the end of the world. And I just always wanted to respect them and treat them and give them some dignity, right?
Right.
So that was always important to me. Just because you're in jail doesn't mean you're a bad person. Let me know if you need something when you
Sure.
get out, type deal. Yeah.
Even in those types of situations, you have an opportunity to humanize the badge too.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, because we're human.
Yeah.
And I try to tell people that I got dressed today just like you did.
Sure.
One leg at a time. I wanted to be a police officer, and I knew the responsibility that came with. I had the power to take somebody's rights away, right?
Right.
And that's I don't think as young officers at times we forget that. We take that for granted, and that's something that I want to drill into our younger officers and younger deputies, how serious this job is, how rewarding it can be, and how it can be taken away
Right.
just like that, right?
It's a pretty solemn responsibility to be
sure.
able to do that and be entrusted. Because you're not just trusted by the department, right? But you're trusted by, the people to do the right thing. And I think that's probably a reason why people are so jaded about it. But it's really easy to elevate the bad, especially with social media. And,
Gets the clicks.
it gets, you guys doing good stuff or what you should be doing. That's not intriguing. So it's really unfortunate. So I think anybody that has tuned into you or knows you knows that you are probably the biggest enemy of fentanyl in the area, and you've done just a phenomenal job of bringing awareness to something that, honestly, until hearing you speak a few times, while I appreciate everything you say, it's terrifying to me, right? But what really started you down that path to awareness, I guess you could say?
Yeah, terrifying is a good word because it is terrifying. It's terrifying to me as well. Back in 2022, the summertime, we started losing kids at a pretty rapid rate. July and August of 2022, I think we lost 5 Hayes CISD students to fentanyl poisonings. Although I've known about fentanyl for quite some time, but when a community like Hayes County is hit so hard, so quickly, within just a matter of weeks, Sheriff Cutler came to us and said, I want you and your unit to be the face of fentanyl. We need to get out and just talk to people. Go out and ask for 10 minutes, ask for 15 minutes, and just bring as much awareness to what is going on, because we have to stop the dying. We have to stop what's going on in Hayes County. And he told us to make it ours and do what you want with it, but start and go out. And I think we started doing presentations the first week of September 1st-ish, 2022. And we've done probably 150 of these presentations since then.
Wow.
All throughout Hayes County, all throughout Central Texas. We've been to Houston. We're going to Dallas here in a couple of weeks. We went to Kansas for like 4 presentations. Yeah, so we partnered up with the Forever 15 Project. Janelle Rodriguez and Brandon Dunn. They lost their 15-year-old son, Noah, who went to Johnson High School on August 21st, 2022. And I met her probably a week and a half after her son's death, just a couple of days after his funeral. She was at a press conference that we were at. We were talking about a formation of a task force, and she was there. And at the time, we knew we were going to start doing these presentations. So I went up and introduced myself to them and said, "Hey, this is what we want to do. I'd love if you, whenever you're ready, to come with us and talk to our audiences and tell them your firsthand account of how fentanyl has impacted you, and how it's going to impact you for the rest of your life." And she's never told us no. We've done, like I mentioned a minute ago, 150 of these presentations, and she's been with us through every single one of them. She's gone to Kansas with us. She's gone to Houston with us. She's going to go to Dallas with us. And she continues to travel around the country at times by herself, just giving her testimony and trying to save lives. We're not going to save everybody, but we're trying. As a law enforcement, you want to be Superman. You want to save the world. Over time, I've learned to deal with not being able to do that. But we try every single day. And I think we're making a difference with what we're doing on these fentanyl, just bringing awareness. I don't go into a school and talk to and preach to these kids. I don't talk down to them. We really want to focus on education and awareness, and we want to tell them, we love you. If you're making a mistake, here's what could happen. We know you're dealing with whatever you might be dealing with, anxiety, depression. Your parents might be going through divorce, whatever stresses you're dealing with. We're here to help with that. And if we can identify that, the chances of us saving you or keeping you from taking that drug, whether it be a pill or whatever else, we're potentially saving lives every time we go and talk to these folks. And every time we leave a school, every time we leave a presentation, our Forever 15 project, Janelle, is contacted by many, many kids.
Wow.
I mean, Yeah, every time we leave a presentation, within the hour, kids are texting her, emailing her, "Hey, I need help. Hey, I know so and so is doing this. Can you help us?" Our kids and even adults are reaching out to our anonymous Crime Stoppers. Hays County has a Crime Stoppers program that's being utilized. All of it together is making a difference because the numbers have slowly started to go down. Although we've already had 2 poisonings this school year. Thank goodness no one has passed away.
Right.
But it's still here. It's not going anywhere. And all we want to do is to keep that number as close to zero as possible. I mean, we're losing 200 people a day in this country to fentanyl. So it's a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah, it's just absolutely staggering. It sounds like somewhere along the way, this went from a project that you were intrigued in, and it became very personal. And I've heard you speak to the stories, right? As soon as you talk to a parent who lost their kid, then it becomes very personal. And unfortunately, it's just kind of dominoes, right? Because you've talked to way too many parents who've lost their kids.
Yep. And that's what I talk about that in my presentation. At some point, we all have to get tired of going to our friend's funeral. At some point, we have to get tired of seeing our friends essentially die in class.
Yeah.
And I tell every audience that I go to, I'm tired. I've been a cop for 25 years. Every time someone passes away from a fentanyl poisoning or any type of poisoning, we have to go to those calls. So I've got to walk in that front door and I've got to see a 15-year-old girl or boy dead in their bedroom. Like I've seen that way too many times, right? So it's something that I don't want to see.
Yeah.
I signed up to do the job. I'm going to see it and I'll see it again, but I'm tired of seeing it. And I'm also tired of hearing, like I can't unhear mom or dad screaming bloody murder because their kid's not getting up.
Yeah.
That's a scream that you'll never hear unless you're in that position. It's a horror, it's like a scream you hear in a horror movie. And you can hear that play over in my head at times just because I've heard it way too many. I've seen death way too much in my career. So that's part of the reason I'm passionate about it. I'm also passionate because I do have teenagers.
Right.
Right. It could easily be me telling a story about my kid making this mistake by popping a pill for whatever reason. Great kid. Just like all these kids are great kids. They're making a mistake and they're not waking up from it.
Right.
So I just try to humanize a little bit. I just try to not label them. We have to get rid of the stigma. We have to stop the name calling, and we have to work together to start saving each other.
Right. Well, and that was one of the things. I mean, I took DARE in 5th grade, and obviously it was a big deal. And my takeaway from DARE was that somewhere there was going to be some scary kids around the corner that for some reason just really wanted me to smoke weed. And I didn't know why those kids were going to be there doing that. But I think that was a lot of our takeaway, right? When we were growing up about drugs and things like that. And then I got older and I realized that that's obviously not the case and people go different directions for different reasons. But, you know, in listening to you speak another time, what I came home and I told my wife, and really the terrifying thing is, it's one of two things, is that, you know, mistakes that my peers made with drugs or, you know, experimentation that they did growing up, it wasn't necessarily lethal. It didn't have that lethal potential that kids do now. And so that's one side of things. But, you know, you talk about kids that, you know, there's unbelievable academic pressure on these kids right now. And so, you know, this kid doesn't need to sleep because he doesn't need to work. So he's got that extra hour available to him, but you've got to work. And so you've got to manufacture that time. And so you take a pill, right, to do that. And it's more cost effective for you to buy that from your friend than to get it through another source. However, a pill like that can kill you. So, you know, kind of the long way to say that it's not bad kids that are dying from fentanyl. To your point, good kids, all kids are good kids, but it's not drug addicts that are dying from fentanyl. It's not people that are going out and looking for that high. Nobody is safe from fentanyl, which is just, as a parent, again, that's absolutely terrifying to me.
It knows no demographic.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't care if you're a millionaire or just a regular Joe like you and I.
Right.
It doesn't care if you live on the west side of the tracks or the east side of the tracks. Every portion of Hays County has been directly affected and has experienced death or poisonings from fentanyl, whether it be Euland on the east side or Dripping Springs on the west side, everywhere in between.
Right.
There's people who've been poisoned in every portion of this county. And it's like that across the state and across the country. Again, you know, we lost 109,000 people last year alone. One of my slides, I talk about those numbers, and I asked the kids, like, hey, what does 109,000 people look like? And my next slide is a college football stadium that holds 105,000 people. And they're like, oh my God, that's how many people died in 1 year. But I said, unfortunately, the stadium at UT can only hold 105,000 people. 109,000 people died from it last year. That stadium can no longer hold the amount of people who are dying from this stuff. And it's mind-boggling. But it's here and it's not going anywhere. There's stuff that's coming that's stronger than fentanyl. So we have to continue to continue this fight. We have to continue to bring awareness. And we're doing that.
Right.
And we're not going to stop as long as I'm here. Because it's important that we do everything we can, not just as a sheriff's office, but other community leaders, the schools, continue to work together and collaborate to bring as much awareness and education and continue to put these drug dealers in the jail.
Yeah, there's just not enough you can do, right? And I kind of wonder if sometimes, does it feel every now and again, especially when you answer another call or we get word that there's just another overdose, I mean, does it ever feel kind of like a futile attempt? You know, be like, God dang, I just gave 5 presentations last week. I'm working my tail off. And then did this person just not get the message? Did they not care?
You can get disgruntled at times throughout your career. I mean, I can remember right before school ended last year, we were over at Lehman High School, and I talked to, I think, 10th and 11th graders 2 different times. I wasn't gone 20 minutes, and EMS was back there because a kid decided to pop a pill and was poisoned.
Right.
But again, I'm not going to label them. I'm not going to call them names. Because whatever they're battling,
right.
And that addiction is very, very strong. So if they want to pop a pill because they want to forget about their parents going through a divorce, doesn't mean they're a bad kid. They're just trying to escape reality, right? So, although I'm human. Again, I'm human. I'm going to get upset. I'm going to get mad. I'm like, what are you doing? I just talked to you.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to realize and try to sympathize or empathize with what these people are going through.
Yeah. These people that are dying, or just overdosing or whatever the case may be, they're using fentanyl. The thing that blows my mind about it is, do they not know the lethality of this drug? Is it providing something that another drug cannot? Again, I'm thankful, I guess, kind of novice and ignorant about it, but I think this is just another opportunity to provide education and information. What is it that they're seeking out with fentanyl in particular?
Yeah, the high that it provides.
Okay.
It's 100 times stronger than morphine.
Yeah.
50 times stronger than heroin. So if you can imagine something that's 100 times stronger than morphine, how that loopy that makes you feel. It's a very, very euphoric high from everybody that I've talked to or read the research I've done. And when you experience that high, you're always going to chase it. You're always going to continue to try to chase it, chase that same feeling. And it's very, very addictive. So it's very, very hard to get off of. So again, a lot of times people aren't looking for fentanyl.
Right.
They're doing cocaine or they're doing methamphetamines, but what people don't realize that every illicit drug that's out there today is more than likely going to have fentanyl in it. So a lot of the folks think it's just these counterfeit pills that have fentanyl in it, and that's what we're seeing in Hays County quite a bit.
Right.
But fentanyl's in cocaine, it's in heroin, it's in methamphetamine, it's in X pills. Any drug that's out there today, it's going to have fentanyl in it. And what I'm very, very terrified of is it won't be long before these refillable vape cartridges, we'll start seeing liquid fentanyl in that. And when that happens, we're all going to know because those numbers are going to skyrocket because the amount of kids and amount of people just in general that are vaping is very, very high. It's the end thing to do at schools these days is vape. And I talk about that in these presentations because I don't want to see some kid who think he's getting a THC vape. It's going to have fentanyl in it at some point, and it's coming.
Basically what's being created is like a better, the lethality aside, what people are trying to pursue is a better heroin, a better methamphetamine, a better cocaine, because if I'm dealing cocaine without fentanyl and you are, then your product is more attractive than mine.
That's right.
And people are just constantly, there's an economy to it, right? So they're just constantly trying to produce and provide a more attractive drug. But, something that really fascinates me because it's not above board necessarily is kind of like the economy of narcotics, because there's an economy to everything else.
Yeah.
And, you know, I watched something on Netflix about the economy of cocaine, which is just fascinating, you know, how you go from these people that are absolutely dirt poor in the fields of Colombia and how it reaches kind of this hourglass point. And that's where the Pablo Escobars of the world, because they're bringing it in. And those were the guys getting filthy rich because they were distributing. What doesn't make sense about fentanyl to me is it seems counterintuitive to kill your customers. Do they just not care? Is there just a never-ending source of users?
Yeah, I get every single presentation. I get asked that same question, and I try to be as honest and open as I possibly can. To me, they don't care if you live or die.
Yeah,
right. Because someone right behind you is going to come spend the $10 on that next pill, no matter what.
Yeah.
What I think they don't want to happen is for 5 juveniles to die within 6 weeks, because then they get the full attention of the DEA and everybody else. But at the end of the day, if they kill 1 or 2 people a week or a month in Hays County, they don't care.
No big deal.
Because someone else is going to come buy the next drug.
Yeah.
And that's why I think they're starting to target our young people more and more, because they want to continue to build that customer base to get these kids addicted at an early age, because they're going to continue to buy. So it's insane. But at the end of the day, they don't care.
You know, something that you mentioned a second ago about, you know, it's in the bad stuff. And I think a lot of people get to our point in life and they say, yeah, I did a lot of crazy stuff in college when I was growing up, but I never did cocaine. I never put a needle in my arm, almost like it's a badge of honor. But what I want to go out and yell on 1626 right now is it's in marijuana. You know, it's going to be in your kids' vape cartridges. So again, it's not about being a hardcore drug user that you could die from fentanyl, right? It's doing the same things that a lot of our peers did growing up, the gateway thing, the party drugs, what have you. People are dying from that. And I think that's what really terrifies me, is really how accessible death is to folks like that. I mean, is there a medicinal use to this stuff? I think because that's a lot of question, right?
Yeah,
I mean, dealing in death or?
Yeah, no. So fentanyl has been around since about 1960. Doctors started prescribing it. It's a pain reliever. It's a pain medicine, right? So they're still using it today. But when they prescribe it or when they give it in micro doses. So it's very, very, very small doses. And at times even doctors make mistakes and they send their patients into an overdose state. But they're in the hospital so they can give that Narcan to bring them back a lot easier. But that's how powerful it is. They've got to give it in a very, very small. So when these drug dealers and these cartel folks are making it, they're essentially putting a bunch of powder on a table, mixing it all together, and they start pressing pills.
Wow.
And they don't care where the fentanyl is in the pill. They don't care how much, or they don't care if there's any fentanyl in it at all. You're still going to buy it.
Right.
And if you don't get high, you're not going to go back to your drug dealer and ask for a refund, right?
Right.
You're going to spend another $10 to buy another pill. So that's what we're seeing over and over. They just don't care.
Right.
All they care about is that money. I mean, these high-level dealers will drive to Los Angeles or Phoenix and buy 100,000 pills for 60 cents a pop.
Right.
Come back here to Texas, to Hays County, and sell them for 10. Do the math. I mean, every load's $1 million, and it's insane how it's a multi-billion-dollar business.
Yeah, and I've seen one of the most impactful images I've seen is you got the end of a very sharp pencil, and you see a few grains of what looks like sand, but it's a lethal dose of fentanyl. So people have no idea just how little it takes to kill you.
Yeah, one of the things that Mom talks about, Janelle Rodriguez talks about, one of the presentations she does is she has a sweet and low packet or a sugar packet, and it's a certain amount of milligrams.
Yeah.
And she'll give it to me, and I'll open it up, and I'll dump it in my hands while everybody's watching. And she's like, well, that is enough fentanyl to kill 500 people just in that one sweet and low packet.
You could all be killed by this little sweet and low.
And I'll tell almost every presentation, I said if I wanted to, I could close the doors, turn the AC on, and throw fentanyl in the vents. It'll kill us all within minutes. That's how powerful this stuff is. I mean, people don't realize it. People can't grasp 2 milligrams can kill you. They see the pencil, but when they see us pour a pack of sweet and low out, and we tell them that could kill 500 people, I mean, you can hear the gasp in the audience, and it kind of gives them a better idea of how powerful this stuff is.
Yeah, times just kind of speechless hearing those things, because I'm just, as a parent, there's all these constant external threats and forces that you're going up against, and I'm worried about bullies and hurt feelings and sports and things like that. But one thing I really shouldn't have to worry about as a dad of a 9-year-old, is that in a couple of years she's going to be in middle school, and there are kids in middle school that are overdosing and dying. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had a middle school student in Hays County die January 3rd of this year.
Yeah.
So it's if it's happening in Hays County, it's happening all over the state and the country.
Right.
So yeah, our middle schoolers, we're pulling vapes off elementary school kids these days. So that's not very prevalent, but it's occurred.
Yeah.
So it's happening, right?
Yeah.
So that's what's scary.
And you kind of, another concern that I have about it is, just be kind of numb about it. Mm-hmm. Almost like, well, that's just one more thing. But it's not one more thing. I mean, it's a clear and present danger that should terrify everybody, and nothing should really be taken easily. Again, kind of not to belabor this too much, but one other super impactful story that I read, and I think it came over the border in California, was just maybe like 250,000 pills, and it all came by way of Skittles. It came in Skittles boxes, had the little S on it and things like that. And I imagine that just makes it that much easier, right, from a transportation standpoint. But we just can't be safe enough, right? I mean, there's no amount of Halloween's in a month. What do I do?
Yeah, we get that. I got that question last year in Halloween. Yeah. And what I tell kids and parents both is like, your neighbors aren't trying to poison your kids, right? And I tell them, like what we did in the 80s, we were worried about needles and stuff in our apples and our candy.
Right.
I had to come home, dump it out. My parents went through it, and I got to eat it. Anything that was opened or loose, we didn't eat. So when I tell the kids and the parents the same thing. Go out, trick or treat, have a good time, get your candy, go home, just go through it, let your parents look through it, and then eat away. Have a good time.
Yeah, make it the dentist's problem.
Yeah.
I never found a razor blade in any of my candy. That seemed like the most psychopathic thing that I could ever imagine. But I don't know who came up with that idea, but it blows my mind.
It's always something, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't hear this message enough. I mean, I get, I get shivers hearing this story, and it's terrifying, but I think it's something that we can't hear enough of. And the work that you're doing, obviously, to turn it from a project into a passion, I think has allowed you to speak with that much more conviction. And people like me hear that message in a different way when you speak with that level of conviction. So, thanks.
It's personal. I've got kids as well, and I'm tired of seeing death. I truly am. And I'm tired of having to watch loved ones cry and be upset and grieve. And I lost my cousin just about 2 weeks ago to fentanyl. So it affects anybody and everybody. I mean, so it's not going anywhere. So it's important for us, and it's important for parents. It's important for schools and teachers and counselors to continue just to talk to our kids and be there for them, and not just brush them off when they're trying to tell you something. Because if you do that, at some point they're going to turn to something else so they can forget about what they're going through.
You just no level of engagement that you can have with your kids that's too much.
Yep.
Right. And so that's kind of the struggle that we're all trying to find.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So you're doing something else that terrifies me. You've decided to run for elected office, which, in this particular type of environment blows my mind, because people can get so ugly, right? It's not just somebody who's had a noble, admirable career stepping up and saying, hey, I want to serve the public in a different way. It really becomes, my family is entering into this. I have no idea what kind of things people are going to say, make up out of thin air, whatever the case may be. But I have to imagine that anybody that's raising their hands these days has to, again, be very convicted about what it is they're doing. So maybe this is a super big question, or maybe it's a softball, but why?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. My why is a lot, right? Again, I grew up around law enforcement, so that's what I know. That's what I love. That's what I breathe and eat and bleed. And I love cops. I looked up to my dad every single day, right? I saw him put the uniform on. I saw him come home. I heard his stories. I ran around the police station. Cops have always been heroes to me, right? So that was a big that's what led me to this profession, and I love serving. I love going out and helping people. I love talking to people. I love listening, and I love being there for anybody. So that's what we do as law enforcement. We have servant heart. We go out there and just listen and be there for them in their time of need. We interact with people at their worst times.
Sure.
Right? So it's important for us as law enforcement to be able to be a counselor, be able to just listen and not judge just because they made a bad decision.
Right.
We're seeing people out there worse. So I love cops. I grew up in Hays County. This is probably one of the only places in this country that I would raise my hand up and try to take the seat of the sheriff. Because I grew up in this community. I love this community. I love what it represents. I love everything about it. So that's two of the biggest reasons, right? Is because that's what I love, being a cop.
Yeah.
Right. And I've always looked up to people who step up and want to lead. So I've taken that step for a variety of reasons, but just being able to be there and serve not only the community but the deputies that are already there, the corrections officers that are already there. I want the challenge of. I love a challenge, so I want the challenge of growing this agency. Sheriff Cutler has been the sheriff since 2010, has done an amazing job bringing this sheriff's department from the prehistoric days, and we're starting to modernize and move in the right direction. So I want that challenge to continue to grow this department,
right.
to continue to lead it, to make it ours. Hays County is one of the fastest growing counties in this country, right? So there in itself comes a challenge, right? How
Right.
are we going to move the department forward? And I want to be able to do that, not just with me and my executive team, but I want to be able to do that with the folks that are already there, that are on the ground, whether in the jail or on the streets. And I want to make it ours. They're going to be there long after I'm gone. So I want them to be able to build something they're proud of. So that's a couple of reasons why I want to do it. It's not for the title. It's not for egotistical purposes. It's merely because of the challenge, and these folks that work at the sheriff's office and the folks that live in Hays County deserve to have a sheriff that will ensure public safety.
Sure.
And not make it what Austin is today.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of people. I call them kind of cultural refugees, the folks that are fleeing Austin to come down to our neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very legitimate reason why people are leaving.
Sure.
And they just don't feel safe, right? And so I can't say thank you enough for trying to shelter me from that, obviously. I think another question that I have about that is, obviously Sheriff Cutler's done a fantastic job in making, directly folks like us feel safe and kind of, creating a little bubble, if you will.
Yep.
What type of growth, what changes do you make? I mean, obviously there's some ideas and some vision that you have, maybe bring some fresh eyes to it. Are there things that you feel need to change? Hey, I want to make sure this stays the same. So I'm going to be very defensive about it. Kind of what are some of those core things?
So my priority is going to be the people that already work there.
Yep.
That's a huge priority for me because we're having a difficult time retaining people. We're having a difficult time hiring people. And that's just not a Hays County issue. That's the law enforcement profession as a whole.
Right.
But I think what we have at Hays County is very it's something that we need to make it more attractable, right? We need to make it somewhere people want to go. And that's part of the challenge, right? So for us to be able to retain people, you have to feel valued. You have to have someone in that office that will know people by their first name, will go out and talk to the deputies that are on the street, will go and talk to the detectives that are in their cubicles trying to do their work. As long as you make people feel valued, they'll run through walls for you.
Yeah.
And just because they know you're doing it for the right reason. So to me, that's the biggest challenge going in is to fill our vacancies, not only on the streets, but in corrections, so we can adequately staff our jail. But to continue to build, like I have ideas what I want to do, but I want to be able to talk to the folks that are already there and kind of get their ideas and kind of merge our visions.
Right.
Because I want to build something that they're all proud of.
Right.
Right. I want them to have the buy-in. I want them to feel like they belong, and have a say-so because they do. Without the troops that are on the ground, you're nothing as a leader. Right. So it's important for me to engage the folks that are there. Over the 2 years that I've been there, I've made it a point to interact as much as I can with everybody that's there. The talent that we have at the sheriff's office is second to none. I mean, truly, there are deputies and detectives and corrections officers that truly care about their job and want to serve Hays County. So it's been refreshing to see. I didn't know what to expect walking in, coming from a large department like Austin PD, coming to a quarter of the size agency, but the power and the amount of love and care for their job that we have at the sheriff's office, it's been very, very refreshing. So the stage is set. Sheriff Cutler set a great foundation. I just want to come in and continue to grow it and grow it with the folks that are already there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, what you're mentioning is a lot of intangibles. You know, you're not talking about upgrading this or new that, or, hey, we need more funding for this. And I think there's obviously a generational shift. Anybody that's responsible for developing relationships, growing their business, hiring and firing, those types of things, understands the generational shift in our workforce, and that, you know, people our age value relationships more than other things. It's not to say that people don't value hard work, but that's certainly something that folks our age value a little bit more. And then you come around the dark side of the moon of COVID and the way that, you know, we were all like, hey, go to your corners type of thing. And so that's really kind of a perfect storm for somebody like you to come in and say, hey, we've got a lot of things that we're doing really well. We need to make sure that our people feel valued, and I'm going to invest in relationships. I think that's a pretty impactful way to go about it.
It's important because when you do that, they come to work happy.
Yep.
Right. And they go out and do they just do a better job because they're happy. They want to be there. They're not disgruntled. They're not just going to go sit in their patrol car in a dark corner. They're going to go out and patrol your neighborhood to catch those folks that are doing bad things, because unfortunately it's just there. We're a growing county. The criminal element's going to continue to come. So we have to be proactive, and for us to expect that from the folks that are working on the streets, we have to be proactive as leaders to interact with our folks to make them feel valued and loved and cared for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, that's powerful to hear where your priorities lie. I think that's fantastic. Can you tell me more about kind of what's the timeline of, you know, your campaign? Where are you right now? What's the next deadline? What kind of things do people need to be paying attention to?
Yeah, so we're getting close. I mean, we've been at it pretty hard for about 2 years. We didn't formally announce until February of this year.
Okay.
And we've essentially been blowing and going for quite some time now. I mean, where we're at in the campaign, we're 6 months out from the March primary.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm going to have a opponent on the primaries yet or not. I won't know that until December 11th. But I'm going to campaign right now through the whistle, no matter if I have an opponent or not. Because at some point, whether I get through when I get through the primary, I'm going to have an opponent. So I'm going to work just as hard now, whether I have an opponent or not.
It's kind of silly to me that this is a political conversation. That this should entirely be an apolitical conversation. You know, crime doesn't care. Doing the right thing doesn't care. Why? Why is this red versus blue thing? Why isn't this just a let's find the absolute right person that's going to care about crime and people in our community?
That's a great point. I mean, we as a campaign try to express that every chance that we get.
Yeah.
But the rules are the rules, and it's set out in the Texas Constitution that we have to pick a party. So that's what I have to do, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, if you call 911, we're not going to say, are you Republican or Democrat?
Right.
We're going to say, what's your emergency? How can I help? And we're going.
Yeah.
If I pull you over, I'm not going to ask for your driver's license and ask what party you vote for.
Right.
It's just, we're going to do our job because it's important for the sheriff and for a lot of elected officials to serve the entire county, whether you're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
Right.
So, yeah, I do have an issue with that. I do, and I express that quite a bit. But at the end of the day, the rules are the rules, and I'm going to play by them. But it's important for me as a candidate to go out and talk to, I don't care, whatever group it is, whether it be a Democratic-leaning group or a Republican-leaning group. I want to get out because I want to show them who I am, what I'm about, what I want to do. I want to show that I'm unrelatable. And I'm not going to discriminate because you vote for somebody else. Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. The sheriff and the department or the agency as a whole serves the entire Hays County.
Right.
So I agree. We shouldn't have to pick a party, but we do.
Yep. I'm not tooting your horn, but I think you've done a really good job of keeping that apolitical, consistent message when you go out there. And I think that's refreshing for people these days because we're so exhausted. I think people really get worn down. And I think going into this next year, people really need to understand it's not that I have stances this way or stances that way, but let me talk to you about the importance of electing the right sheriff, regardless of where you stand. And I think that just getting out in communities and speaking to people in that apolitical fashion, I really hope that it pays dividends for you.
Yeah.
Obviously. So.
No, we try really hard to focus on that because we just believe that. We serve the entire county, and I hate that we have to. But I think if I just be me and be myself, I'll be able to get votes from whoever.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe that. I wouldn't have signed up for it if I didn't think I could get the job done. And we're going to work hard. No one's going to out campaign me. And I look forward to taking the office.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to you. I mean, kind of in wrapping everything up today, is there anything else that I should have asked you about or that we should have talked about?
No, it's a good question. I am married. My wife, Peggy, I met her in 2004.
Okay.
We have 2 daughters, like I mentioned, 18 and 15 now. Yes, and when we first got married, we moved to Kyle. I lived in Plum Creek for about 9.5 years. Moved to Buda, lived in Whispering Hollow for about 4 or 5 years, and now we live out in Dripping Springs for the last 4 years. So, and again, I grew up just down the road here in Buda. So I am Hays County.
Yep.
I'm not depending on that to get me elected at all because there's so many people that move in and out of here every single day. But it's important for me to ensure public safety in Hays County.
Yep.
And I'm going to work tirelessly to make sure that it stays that way. This is a great county to live in. It's a safe county to live in. But we're the fastest growing county in the country. So with that comes the criminal element. And we need to continue to collaborate with the community. We need to continue to collaborate with every law enforcement agency in this county and the surrounding counties because we don't want what's happening in Austin or any of the crime-ridden cities to happen right here in Hays County. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Well, yeah, thank you. There's obviously, you got a passion for what you do, but I think even more important to me is you got a passion for where you do it at. I think, as neighbors, I think that's really impressive.
Yeah,
and I appreciate what you do. And I appreciate you coming in and spending a Wednesday afternoon with me.
Yeah.
I imagine you're a busy guy. I know you're a busy guy, so I really appreciate it, and I wish you guys the best of luck. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and thanks to James as well for making this happen. So I appreciate being the first guest. It's an honor, man.
Cool. I appreciate it. You guys have a good one.